Welcome to Death Row.
Like we always do about this time.
I'm gonna fight your fucking ass!
You're playing touch butt with that dork in the park.
There's a little snake in the grass.
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
No forget Jesus, people! I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody!
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
I'm back.
Who the fuck is that guy? Break out the red panties. We're rich, baby.
I would like to introduce...
Welcome to the MMAforMoney Show, episode 29. Yes, you are all in quarantine. We are all in quarantine. We are all one in quarantine. I am at MMA State of Mind, Bob Voss, your favorite garbage man, wishing I was certain customers' least favorite garbage man, which how close they're getting to me, but I'll get to that a little bit later. I'm here with my co-host at Don't Cope Just Win, Mike Copenhaver. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good despite the circumstances, man. Just happy to be home, growing all kinds of green stuff, and just happy to be with my little boy and watching him grow.
Absolutely. Family is what it is all about. Not to get too sappy, but I would hope at least everybody that you got someone close to you or someone living with you that's family, maybe take the positive side of this quarantine and get that good one-on-one time with them that you would not normally get. Well, this is another show that's a little bit different like typical shows. After all this quarantine shows, this might just be our new normal. Who knows? But we are going to give an update on UFC 249. There's been some updates in that category. It seems to be the only MMA news of the day, at least fight card wise. There's a few other news and notes that we can bring up. We will do it at that time. We're going to do our little COVID corner. As long as that lasts, as long as we're in it. Survival tips from the man Mike Survival Tips. And then we talked about it last week. We are going to take a deep dive into the Ultimate Fighter 6 finale. Yes, a random card, you may ask. Why are we picking this card, you may ask? Well, on this card, Mike's brother both competed and won and has some nice inside behind the fence type look that you wouldn't get anywhere else. He's going to provide that here, as well as breaking down all those fights, and you'll get to be there for a discussion on what we're going to do next week, and maybe you'll even be involved. So quickly, before I go into the little segments we got going here, just a brief update on UFC 249. Last time we spoke, we were going back and forth on where we thought 249 was going to be. We thought it was for sure going to be Khabib versus Tony.
We were wrong.
Yeah, we were wrong. Well, it made sense, and if you listen to Khabib's side, well, for those of you who don't know, Khabib put a Instagram post up at about 5 a.m. yesterday morning. He was in Russia. He originally had traveled to Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, which we had brought up because the UFC told him that 100% the fight was going to take place overseas, a 99% chance it's going to take place there, so he went there. Well, and then they were about to have a lockdown. He wouldn't be able to leave, so he went home to Russia. And so still thinking, okay, it's just going to be out of the country. I guess it's not going to be there. Maybe it'll be in Russia. Maybe it'll be someplace else. And then Russia got put on lockdown, and he can't get out of there. So he had gotten some news from the UFC that they were looking to move on with promoting the card with or without him, which would mean finding an opponent for Tony Ferguson. There seems to be a contract out there for one Justin Gaethje to have that fight. I do not know where it would be. I do not know if there would be a title involved. I hope not, because at some point, given Tony another interim, I don't think he'd be down for that. Usman says he's willing to fight Masvidal on that card. Woodley's saying he'll fight anybody on that card.
It's just garbage.
Oh, absolutely. Conor McGregor's coach is saying he might hop in and fight Tony or whoever just to get a little bit of that.
Diego Sanchez's coach said he'd fight too.
Oh my goodness. Well, I would bet he does. He's going to warn everybody that he might kill.
Dude, that
Tony
guy is the
octagon.
biggest freak show weirdo ever, dude. Him and Diego got some weird little butt buddy thing going on. I mean, I don't know if people are talking about this enough, but Diego Sanchez's coach is super, super duper weird, man. I mean, I don't know what he's got, but he's definitely got the spell over Diego's little butt.
Well, and I want to have some friends of Diego ask him if his coach has asked him to like sign over some of his net worth or put him in his will or just like that odd stuff like that could end really badly. Actually, speaking of bad things, before I get your word on 249, the bit of breaking news that did happen over the last few days, going along with the Albuquerque situations, John Jones got pulled over again, was going to get a DWI again. Couldn't walk the line after doing so many inspirational Instagram posts about being safe and staying in. He decided to drive out Albuquerque at 4 a.m. He was even going to get an aggravated DWI for how high he blew over the limit, was failing miserably at the field sobriety tests. And actually the news just came out. I don't know. I just read it. But he's going to get like 4-day house arrest, which, I mean, we're all quarantined, so that's nothing.
That's it?
So he's not going to go in jail. He has to go to some type of
That's crazy.
rehab type situation. And
that was my
stuff
brother.
Like
He'd be in jail for a lot longer.
Yeah, well, that's why. It's like if that wasn't John Jones, it's like this is his fifth vehicle-related issue in less amount of years. Typically, if you get 2 in a year, you could be in substantial trouble. Like,
it's a shame, man. It seems like he doesn't have any friends or anyone to hang out with either, because he's like alone and talking to bums and stuff.
Well, honestly, it might just be that he's finally distanced himself with like the worst of the worst. So when he gets these weird impulses of, hey, I want to party at like 3 or 4 in the morning. Well, if he's that gone by 4 a.m., he probably started at midnight or 1. All of his buddies are just like, no, dude, we're in a quarantine and it's 3 a.m. I don't want to drink right now. Calm down.
Yeah.
So who knows on that front?
Doesn't
so
he have kids to take care of it?
Dude, he has the 3 kids. He has like, if I remember right, he has 3 girls, and his longtime girlfriend, who he proposed to, coming on probably 2 years ago. I don't think they're married yet, but that's the mother of all of his kids. They started dating in college, so he's been with her for 10 or 12 years.
I don't get it. He should be taking care of his damn kids, dude. I mean, I want to go run amok and act a fool and be an absolute just reckless madman like my brother was, but you can't do that stupid shit, you know? You have to take care of your family and be an adult, be professional.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, no, we'll come back to John Jones. We're jumping around a little bit, but like we hadn't decided to talk on that part yet. But I want to get your take on 249 as it stands now. Obviously, very volatile. I know last week it was all about we did think it was going to happen, and just more question of where. I still think it has a chance to happen. Guess not what you think would be going to be happen, but if you couldn't have Khabib in that matchup, who would you rather see Tony face? Like, even like ball in the park, like eye in the sky thing. Like, would you rather see him fight Conor? Would you rather see him fight Justin Gaethje? Would you rather just see him fight? I don't know. You pick. What sounds good to you?
It's I can't believe we're having to talk about this, dude. It's just how many times has this been where our heart's been broken? It's like I don't know if we're ever gonna see this fight actually go down, dude. I can't believe the stupid virus is literally what stopped us again from Khabib versus Tony Ferguson. But if we got to do it, I mean, Justin Gaethje versus Ferguson would be pretty fun to watch. Obviously, there'd be a lot of blood and a lot of violence, and so that could be interesting as well. Other than that, I don't know, man. I'm just disappointed, just like all the fans are. I thought it was happening for sure, no matter what, somewhere in Russia. I mean, I don't know why Ferguson wasn't already over there waiting. So it's kind of ridiculous. I guess Dana White didn't have any location at all because they didn't have any communication on the logistics.
Well, I get Dana's if the plan was like Dubai, like that area. You kind of understand where he probably talked to the typical people he talks with. They're like, "Oh no, we're fine, and those guys have decent amount of tentacles in the government, so they're probably saying, no, that we could for sure have it, no problem. And then just those few higher ups that actually can do something sealed it. So I don't know. At this point, since Khabib and Tony has fallen out, actually, I want to quick check something for you guys. I know part of the issue with them getting this going on right now was at some point Khabib will not be fighting because he does not fight or do training camps during Ramadan. And yeah, this year Ramadan is from April 23rd to May 23rd. But I mean, at some point, why not? Let's see, when would we get Memorial?
That's a good investigation on your part. So we're not going to have that for sure.
Well, that's why I wanted to quick. That would be way too close because you won't do training camp during it. We've been waiting long enough for this fight card. I mean, for this particular fight. At some point, just push it off till July. I mean, don't wrong, try to get another fight going, like in the interim. But even that, like, skip April. A lot of companies are pushing a lot of stuff to May at the earliest. But let's just say, to be safe, to end of May. Just try to get a card in either end of May or early June. try to get that being a pay-per-view, and then have the big pay-per-view in July, put Khabib and Tony on there and the other big fights you want on there. International Fight Week, or well, it used to be International Fight Week, the 4th of July card will actually feel like the 4th of July cards of old. You can have like 3 title fights on there. It could be a big deal. I know they want to make money, and I know Dana has like this thing in him to have to get it done, but I don't know, at this point, since the only reason I was okay with him trying to get this fight card going is because I wanted to see Khabib and Tony. The fact that it's not happening anymore, I'm more and more okay with them calling fights for a few more weeks or however long the governing bodies say we should. I don't know, what's your take on that? Since Khabib and Tony isn't happening, would you be okay with them just holding off and waiting on a fight card?
Yeah, I mean, this is a special situation where I don't think we should be messing around. We just need to wait. We're waiting for every other bout, so why not wait for basically the greatest bout of all time that we've been robbed of 4 or 5 times? So just wait. We'll rendezvous and get it going and over in July and over Fight Week Vegas.
Okay, that was a little 249 update. Now, quick, jumping back to John Jones, just for a minute. What a lot of questions going around with people is, and I think we've talked about this in the past, where could John Jones possibly be if he wasn't just such a self-destructive guy? I mean, if he just had half the training ethic of some of the current champions, how good could he really be, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that he's not even trying, really. And so I don't know, man. I mean, it's kind of like same with Mike Tyson, also like similar. My brother, John Jones, isn't there yet, but the way he's going, he looks like he's going to end up next to my brother in a jail cell one day, and might kill more people, which sounds crazy, but I mean, he's definitely capable of it. So I just think it's a shame, that certain people just can't pull themselves out of the darkness that they've put themselves in, or their family, upbringing put themselves in, or whatever has happened, the chemistry in their brain. I mean, it just sucks when someone breaks down that bad. But this is it seems like a little self-destruction on the part of. He's got a lot to face, man. I mean, he's taken a lot of damage. He's got CTE just like my brother did, and it's take its toll. That's why Reyes' fight was so close. Next time will be even closer. So he knows this. He's almost self-imploding himself, so he doesn't have to do these things,
Oh yeah, well he had said, I believe publicly going into after the Gustafsson fight, he always let there be an excuse in case he lost, like not training as hard, not doing whatever, and he just kept winning even while not doing so much. And honestly, I think there's probably only 2 fights that he ever fully all out trained for. I think he did it for the Gustafsson rematch, and I think he did for the DC rematch. I think those were the only 2 fights that he actually nose to the grindstone, all out tried to train for, smartly. Because I think going into the OSP fight, he didn't train the smartest, but he was still super dominant. But yeah, I mean, if he put in half the work ethic and had the focus and family life of, I don't know, someone like Daniel Cormier or someone like that, he would easily be the 2-division champ right now, defending both with no one able to touch him. It's just how I feel. He's getting old enough now that at some point the skills and the reflexes are going to start to wane. Not because of getting so much damage, but just age, man. I mean, he's already been in the sport for over a decade, been in the UFC for over a decade, and has been the champ for a decade in some capacity. So all that wear and tear is going to start going on him now. So I don't know. He's got to change up something, otherwise he's going to go down in a blaze of glory, and absolutely not in a good way. Moving on from the John Jones sadness, we're into our COVID corner. If you can't tell by tweets and other things, I'm a big fan of alliteration, just in general. My little tidbit here, well, the first off is the shelter in place, at least in Illinois, has been extended to April 30th. I don't know what your numbers are at. When do they have you guys staying where you're at, Mike?
Sorry, repeat that question.
I'm not sure. I think the wordage might be different in different states, but basically the quarantine. For us, it's shelter in place is the verbiage they used. Yeah,
that's what we're told to do. We just literally, you could only go for essential stuff. But what's crazy to me, dude, is that a cop could stop you and you tell him you're going to get marijuana, and that's an essential stop over here. So it's just a weird time,
Oh, absolutely. And there's people that are taking it very seriously, which I appreciate. And then you got people that are not in the least bit.
Yeah, and you definitely should for other people's elders' sake, you know?
Oh, I got into a talk. For those who don't know, I work with my dad. Both garbage men, but it's his company. Either way, I had a long talk about my grandma, who's I've brought up on the show before. She's 91, still living alone, still thriving. She's doing great, but just the nervousness of her being alone, and both my folks getting a little worried about that. Although it's like she's safer there, or maybe living with them, where like my dad still goes to work every day, and then you're bringing in different types of possibilities of her possibly catching something. So I don't know. It's a hard go for everybody. My little tidbit. I have one of them is a statement, and the other is more of a question. My first statement is just 6 feet, bro. Just 6 feet. I've never. Probably not till around Christmas when I get like Christmas tips from customers. I've had so many customers come like incredibly close to me to talk to me as right now, because none of them are.
Why are they getting so close?
Dude, so many of them aren't working, I guess, and they're bored. So like I'll come and I'll start picking up their trash, and they will come out to talk to me. Like rather than away from a distance, they like want interaction. So they get incredibly close to me, like almost too close, especially well within the 6 feet of social distancing I'm supposed to have. So today, this guy had a pile of trash, decent size. They had been doing some remodeling. He was coming out to apologize. We've been doing this a little bit at a time, but you know, we had extra time with the virus coming out and stuff like that we had it all done. I'm like, oh no, it's fine. I got it. No problem. He tries to put on gloves. He's going to come help me. I'm like, no, trust me. I got it. It's all good. Are you sure? Are you sure? Nope. Yep. Totally fine. So he still kind of lingers for a little bit, starts telling me some more things, and he's probably like 3 feet like behind me, but still probably too close. And then finally he gets into his car like he's about to go away. And then I get to a pile that's a little bit heavier stuff. And as soon as I start moving over there, he comes back out, starts putting the gloves back on, and he's like within like a foot of me. And I'm like, no, I got it. It's okay. It's what I get paid for. It's my job. I could do this. And just the constant, like, I swear, I was talking to a few guys at work. We haven't had people get this close and consistently, because in a given week, I have like probably half a dozen people talk to me. That's a normal. So far this week, I've had at least a dozen, and it's Tuesday. I guess people are bored and they want some type of interaction, but just too close, man. Too close. So that's my statement. And then I actually have a question. I don't know the rules, but I got an older neighbor across the way. I help her out when I can a few times. I may or may not have brought her up before. She needed to get rid of a few things, and I offered to bring them to work for her, since one, she couldn't carry the stuff, and two, the service that she has wouldn't take it. So I go do that. She tries to help me, which she's like in her late 70s, so that wasn't going to be a good thing. So I just did it. And then she like bakes me like a flavored bread and gives it to me. And Joel drops it off today, which is awesome. Yeah. But how many rules am I breaking if I eat that thing?
I know, but it sucks. So normally that's such a thing I really want.
I know, and she's done it before, so I know it's delicious. I've had like the same exact one before, so it's like it's up on our bookshelf right now. Yeah, because my wife is the one was there that got it, and I'm just like, I probably shouldn't, especially because hasn't been the best. Not my wife, our neighbor hasn't been the best at social distancing. So like she's getting way too close to a lot of people. You could see her like through the windows. I'm just like, I want to eat that because that's gonna be delicious. But also,
well, okay, technically, like if you let it sit for a while and then eat it, maybe it'll be okay.
Well, originally they were saying stuff could sit on for 3 days. I'm like, oh, I could wait 3 days, but
3 days is good.
Well, yeah, but newer reports are saying like 17. I'm like, well, that's not gonna be good in 17 days. That's fresh baked. That's gonna be moldy in a week.
Yeah, I think people are lonely, man. They're not seeing as many people, so they don't want to talk. You know.
Oh, absolutely. So, have you been the one that's done the grocery shopping for your house, or
almost every
time?
Trip that has to do with gas.
You've been seeing the crazy people at the grocery store too?
Oh yeah, definitely. I bring gloves. I bring my gloves.
Oh no, see, I got nothing against the gloves. The gloves make complete sense to me. It's people using winter gear as face masks. Yeah, not even actually face masks. It's not a real N95 medical mask, bro. I'm not even worth your time or my time or something. So it's but I definitely try to do it for for our women. We try to protect them as much as possible. I try not to take the kid as much as possible now. Just try to limit that contact because they're going to touch a lot more things than I was trained on the ambulance to take off my PPE pretty easily and decon properly, so I do it naturally. So I think I just have a little bit of skills. Yeah, honestly, it doesn't take a whole lot. I mean, I try to be a little bit over the cautious just because I don't know what I'm touching at work. But even that, it's wash your hands, take off my work clothes, the basics. Well, moving on a little bit from our COVID corner, we're going to move on to Mike's survival tips. So, Mike, do you have any tips for us this week?
Yeah, I mean, so this week I always barbecue or start fires when I go camping. And I know there's tons of ways to start fires, and most people, start their charcoal. They use lighter fluid, which is absolute garbage. You should never do that. But and you could get a fire starter, little cubes and stuff that cost money, but that's not always around. But what normally is kind of some kind of just chips or snacks. I usually use Doritos or Flaming Hot Cheetos or Cheetos in general because it's corn. Made of corn. It has petroleum in it naturally, so once you light it on fire, it burns for a significant amount of time, even in a windy condition, where you could use that as your tinder and put that under your base of your charcoal and get that all lit up, and it lights up much faster than almost anyone could get their fire going. I use the method all the time. I just did it a couple minutes before Bob and I got on the podcast to get my Kamado Joe, which is a big ceramic barbecue, lit up, and it take about 3 minutes. So that's the survival tip for the week. And if you want any growing tips, you could always hit me up on Twitter.
Well, not just Twitter. Shoot it out. You just started a new Instagram for your growing and stuff, right?
Yeah, and also I started an IG, Mr. Green Thumb 3. If you want to go there, and I put out some nutrients that I use and different stories during the day of the garden and other things at the house, and you could catch me there to get tips and other content.
Well, we have a little special situation for you. I talked about it earlier on. We are going to get into the Ultimate Fighter 6 finale. Okay? We're going to take a trip back to 2007, which we did put out a poll about if you were a fan back during Tough 6. And so far, undefeated. Apparently all of our fans have been fans for a long time, and we're fans back at the Ultimate Fighter 6 in 2007. That's back when the Ultimate Fighter wasn't just still a thing, because obviously they've stopped it in the last year, but it still meant something. The last 10 seasons didn't really mean something. The two coaches were Matt Hughes versus Matt Serra. They were supposed to fight after the airing show for the welterweight title, because Matt Serra was at the time champion after his, some would say, fluke went over beating GSP, but then he got injured, and then it ended up being Hughes versus GSP for the vacant, and GSP tapped him quick. But before we go any further, I want to do a little spoken word for you guys to get you in the mood. Okay? By all means, speed this up or slow it down. I'll try to get nice and low for you. There is no substitute for the ultimate, is what's in store. Bear witness to the fitness of the modern warrior. Boom, another hit has landed. Boom, another hit has landed. The stealth of a sniper, the strength of a viper, the training, the challenge, the ultimate fighter. You're going to get hit. You're going to get knocked out. You're going to feel it. This is the ultimate. Yes, that is the words of the opening song from The Ultimate Fighter for anyone who needs to go down that memory lane. I wasn't going to do it in the same cadence as the guy because I am not a nu metal band, but who knows, maybe someday. God willing. We're talking about this for a couple reasons. One, there's many MMA mainstays that fought in this season. We're going to get into them that are still fighting to this day. I mean, some run their last legs, but they're still fighting to this day. But we're going to get a little bit further down on the card. And obviously, we talked about it before. And also, you'll know more what's going on. So the first fight of the night, this was back when they had shorter fight cards because nowhere near as many fighters. So that was able to happen. The first fight was Jonathan Goulet, who defeated Paul Georgiev in the first round via armbar. Goulet was a mainstay at welterweight, fighting basically the who's who. I mean, it was super quick armbar. Mike, how did you like it? I mean, to me, this seemed very much like they were taking a, not really a prospect, but like one of the guys on the season that they just kind of wanted to get rid of, and they kind of fed him to a much more experienced veteran.
Yeah, That's exactly what happened. I mean, Goulet was just far more experienced, and almost this entire card. I mean, I knew every single person that was set up to win on this card. It was just Ultimate Fighter finales are really kind of easy for me to see, especially talent wise. The gaps are really big, and this is one of them where on every single winner that we're going to talk about, they just were far more superior.
A lot of you may remember Jonathan Goulet. He was the one. Well, I guess that just got broken, but was
he had
originally
the colored hair. Remember?
Well, yeah, he had the colored hair. He fought Koscheck. He fought everybody. He's the one who lost to Bang Ludwig in like. I think technically on the list it's 7 seconds, but then it was a couple years ago.
Knockout ever
where
before.
Dana made the push and was like, no, we're gonna make it 3 seconds or 4 seconds or whatever that because of Joe Rogan's pushing. But Jonathan Goulet was one of the earlier Canadian hype guys. He always had the painted hair. Kind of fought the who's who in the UFC before he was bumped out. He had a lot.
He beat John Alessio, beat Shoney Carter before he even got
beat
there.
Jay Huron back when that meant something. He has a win over Shoney Carter back when that meant something. Luke Kumo, who had a lot of hype coming off the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, lost Josh Koscheck, Ludwig, Jason Day. Oh, that's right. He was one of the ones that got submitted by Justin Hazlett when everyone got really into Justin Hazlett on the way up. Okay, yeah, lost to Swick, Marcus David, basically a little bit of everybody. He has a recent, I guess that's not recent, 2010. So he hasn't fought in over a decade. I remember hearing an interview with him. I believe it was on the Parting Shot podcast back when James Lynch used to do that. I'm pretty sure he was interviewed on that one. So whatever. Moving on. Sorry, I'm also going to throw in some odds in here because we actually will go through the archives and see. I'm not sure what the opening odds were, but I got closing for you guys. For that fight, did they even have odds? Oh, yeah, they do. Okay, here's to go towards our point of that was Sacrificial Lamb. Jonathan Goulet was a minus 350 favorite versus Paul at the plus 290.
That's right.
Next after that was Roman Michian. He defeated Dorian Price. Dorian Price was from The Ultimate Fighter by first round Achilles lock. Roman Matichian was a training partner of Karo Parisian, Manny Gamburian. He was their training partner. That was one of the bigger ways they used to sell UFC fighters on the come up, and that'll come up later on this fight card, is who they trained with, especially if they were names you knew or names you could possibly know. The closing on that one, yeah, similar, minus 330 for Roman Matichian versus the plus 270 for Dorian Price, who I think they billed as a Muay Thai fighter. This was back when those judo guys were coming in a major way. How'd you feel about this fight? I mean, it was a quick submission, one of the few leg type locks that you saw in the early goings.
Yeah, Dorian Price had submission weakness in a major way, and Manny Gamburian and Roman and a lot of the guys, they were highly skilled in jiu-jitsu and judo and other things. There's another guy, Karo Parisian, that was another training partner of them. And so Dorian Price had no business in the ring with any of those three guys I just named. And he had, with a submission weakness and the long, skinny legs, he gave up that leg real fast. I mean, and when you don't know leg locks and the other guy does, you don't play games. You know, you don't want your Achilles or anything getting ripped or torn or having your day and months ruined, you know.
Well, obviously this is going to be preaching to the choir because you all remember when Joe Rogan and all them would go off on this tangent, but leg locks didn't happen a lot in the UFC because so many guys that trained in the traditional gi wouldn't do it because it could possibly hurt people, so they discouraged you doing it, so nobody was that good at it. So once you got some of the judo players, sambo players, some of those guys at a higher level that were really good at that, or there's not as many of the catch wrestlers anymore, but those guys would pull that off too. Next up was, if I recall, and there's a lot of finishes on this card. Matt Arroyo submitted John Kolaski via the first round armbar. Kolaski came out strong right off the bat. Was actually looking good, landing some clean shots. But once Matt Arroyo started putting it back on him, he was able to get it to the ground fairly right off the way and get the submission. The odds for that fight going into it was Matt Arroyo minus 330 plus 270 for Kolaski. And actually, I mean, Matt Arroyo lingered for a bit. Like there were some guys in here that actually had a decent run Actually, no, I mixed him up with a different guy. Never mind. He lost to Matt Brown after that, and then to Dan Kramer, and then didn't fight again. So the dude hasn't fought in 11 years. Who was I thinking of? Whatever. Way off on... Okay, Roy, okay. The last name got me going. Either way. Mike, how'd you go for it?
He was actually he was really good. He was on team. He was part of Team Sarah and Longo, still is, and was really skilled in BJJ. I know my brother talked really highly of his submission game, and my brother talks highly about your submission game. You're pretty decorated because he was rolling with Barrett Yoshida most of the time, and if he says that, then you're pretty solid. So Matt was really pretty. Like I said, not only super impressive on the ground, he was just impressive of the way he held himself as a professional. And John came in there with some fire and was hitting him, but once Matt knew that once he get him to the ground, that John had a submission weakness once again. It was, like I said, some of these were just so blindly set up to see. You can see it now so easily. It's crazy.
Oh, absolutely. There's actually only a few fights on the entire card that have close odds. Like there's only 4 of the total fights
my
that
brother's
are somewhat close. Yeah, dude, I'm honestly again surprised at that fight. We were talking about that a little bit earlier on, and we'll for sure get to that. Next up, actually, there's a connection on this next fight that I was unaware of until talking to Mike before we recorded. But Troy Matalones scored a first-round KO TKO over Richie Hightower. One thing I did want to mention, the odds for that fight were plus 135 for Mandalones and minus 155 for Richie Hightower.
Jeez, that's free money.
I know, Troy looked fantastic. He absolutely did. One thing that just kind of bothered me, this goes back to talking about the training partners. I swear that within the amount of the fight, and this was not a long fight. And in the first round, fairly early into the first round, they were able to drop, I think, about 6 times that Mandalones has trained with BJ Penn in the past.
Of course.
It was just like, okay, he trains with Kendall Grove, BJ Penn. Then 30 seconds later, well, he trains with BJ Penn. Did I mention he trained with BJ Penn? They said BJ Penn's name more than they said Troy's, which is a disservice because this was an utter amazing performance. And I want to hear your take on this performance, and then obviously your connection to Troy, because I was unaware of that.
Yeah, well, Troy Rude Boy Mandalones is a good family friend. I still speak to him almost every day, some on Facebook in some kind of commenting way. He's over there with his kids in Hawaii. He got injured working. He fell off a ladder. He was like 15 plus feet. I think he broke his neck and broke his arm so badly. Got compartment syndrome and almost died from the infection. And he's been through a lot, more than outside the ring than inside the ring, it seems. But the fight was amazing. I mean, I knew that he was going to go in there and whoop Richie Hightower's ass because we were so close to, Troy and Kendall and my brother, and we just knew that they're just certain type of savages that these guys are, and you just don't want to be in the ring with them. And so I just can't say enough good things about Troy. And like I said, he trained with BJ Penn. He still lives on the island and has a little ranch that he's starting. And so I just wish him nothing but the best always. And that performance was definitely a night I wish I could go back and I had more money. I would have put everything down on him too. But I had all my money on my brother that night, and my brother didn't even want me to bet on him. So Troy went in there and handled business and just laid Richie Hightower out.
Well, and that, for any of you that can go back 2 fight cards, I think the last pay-per-view, Mike brought up compartment syndrome. That also got brought up on that broadcast, talking about what happened to Austin Hubbard. So if you want a comparison of what that looks like, you can look up Austin Hubbard's, because I'm not sure that Troy publicized what that looks like. But if you're curious, I do warn you that it will disturb you to your very core. So maybe don't look it up.
He's made it public, and it was a terrible fight, and the recovery's unreal. I mean, he's amazing and so tough and strong mentally and physically still to get through every day because, I mean, we get injured, man, and you're never the same anymore. And some people just quit, and I just love him so much. I just hope he just keeps strength every single day and just enjoys his family.
Another mainstay we've brought up at least 1 or 2 earlier. At that time, were mainstays like Jonathan Goulet. Now we're going to get into some guys that actually stuck around, got some names, or technically still fighting in some capacity. Ben Saunders was up next. He scored the unanimous decision over Daniel Barrera He defended well off his back. He did get put there a number of times, but he defended well, not taking a lot of damage. Sliced Barrera up with elbows and landed the bigger shots when they were on the feet. A decent head kick was had. Blocked a little bit by the hand, but it landed flush. And a second one in the next round in the exact same sequence almost happened again. I guess Barrera didn't know how to keep his hand up as he came up from the ground. But this was a nice way for Ben Saunders to debut within the UFC and showed exactly why he is more entertaining. And this is the early goings of when you can hear Joe Rogan just overly gushing over anything Tim Plan Jiu-Jitsu wise, which happened a lot with Ben Saunders fighting here. Actually, one thing that I noticed too, so I will get your take on Ben Saunders, then if you could, your take on this next part I'm going to bring up now. Watching this, Joe Rogan was, in terms of like technical breakdown and talking about submissions and certain things and just being all out honest, he really brought it. Like I'm kind of surprised. You get so used to how he is now, where, and don't mind, he's like that a little bit. And any submission he thinks is super tight, even back then, but he's very technical with it. Whereas more and more, it's just like the shouting of being excited about something happening, him referencing fights from a decade ago, which isn't a bad thing for his position, but it's not bringing up any fight that happened in the last 5 to 10 years, but everything 10 years and previous. Like, and he doesn't know so many of the fighters that are fighting, or this was back when he actually, like, he knew the fighters, he knew their history. This was when he was in his sweet spot between now and like 2015, 16. Once you start getting past there with how many fights there were, like, you could just tell that he doesn't watch this consistently. So this was vintage him and vintage Goldberg. The whole BJ Penn scenario I brought up on the last fight was all Goldberg every 5 seconds because he knows his points. And oh man, was it in this fight? He kept bringing up, I can't remember if it was in this fight or an earlier one, he kept bringing up octagon control since Saunders was defending well off of his back, because then the other guy wasn't having superiority on the ground. So he just kept saying, it's like, well, then he has octagon control. Like, that's not really how that works. He said it like 6 times.
I just loved hearing the old school Joe and him talking. It was so much different. It actually... It gives you chills, kind of, you know. It makes you happy to hear the old, just classic voices.
Well, and as infuriating as Goldie was towards the end, and he does some of it here too, but it makes you laugh because he was involved in the sport and still is for so long, and he still doesn't know so many basic things that just a casual fan knows. That it's utterly entertaining. The sidetrack, just because it reminded me of that with Goldie and Joe talking. But how'd you see Ben Saunders performing? And it's a good debut and had a lot of upside at the time. I'm not sure if he 100%.
It was another fight. It was just another fight. The guy who's fighting didn't even have a professional record. He only lost to Ben Saunders inside the house in the tough exhibition. So. In a unanimous decision, so it was exactly kind of the same thing. It wasn't much different in the sense of that. So it was Ben Saunders doing what he was supposed to do, and that was to win that fight. Luckily, he was crafty enough to throw those elbows in the guard.
And I forgot to give you guys the odds for that one. That was Ben Saunders was a minus 235 favorite, and Dan Barrera plus 195, which for a little bit you were a little scared because Saunders was on the bottom. But honestly, surprising. Like they favored Saunders a lot in spots that I think if they would happen now, they might give to the other fighter, which I found a little surprising. One thing I realized I don't have in the notes, but it's the perfect time I caught it because it happens after this fight, so we're still going in order. The next fight was George Sotiropoulos versus Billy Miles. This was this season had a lot of the guys fighting at 170, but would ultimately drop to lightweight. Even the winner of this season did so. George Sotiropoulos was a jiu-jitsu, I wouldn't say phenom, but everything was geared towards getting into the jiu-jitsu game, and it showed here. He got a first-round rear naked choke over Billy Miles and looked good. I mean, ultimately dropped to lightweight. He was always teetering around that top 10 for like the remainder of his UFC career. He was the UFC's not first, but like lighter weight Aussie fighter that could really do something. I had to change my opinion because I was going to say first Aussie fighter, but that's not true. Once you go to more lightweight, then that becomes a little bit more clear. But it looked good. showed why Sarah picked him and why he wanted to be with Sarah, given the jiu-jitsu background. He's retired. He only had one fight outside of the UFC after getting to the UFC at this point, but he went on quite a loss streak after the fact. He was killing it after this. Like, this started his huge win streak, and let's quick count it up for you guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Went on an 8-fight win streak, including this fight, beating halfway decent names at lightweight. And having quite a losing run. First going to Dennis Seaver, then RDA, then Ross Pearson. That was the UFC on FX6. That was the big one down in Australia after the tough smash this season. KJ Noons, and then lost to Mike Ricci. I'm sorry, you're losing to Mike Ricci. I mean, that was in Titan, but still, you're losing to Mike Ricci. It's time to retire, and he did. But at the time, it looked phenomenal, and like we said, went on quite the run. The odds for that one, and obviously why he looked so good, he closed at minus 390 to Billy Miles plus 320. Before I pass it to you, just the last thing I remember about George Soteropoulos, you don't really see it at welterweight. Once the dude drops to lightweight and he becomes leaner, he just had the oddest shaped torso I think I've ever seen. I mean, if you don't look it up, George Soteropoulos from one of his 155 fights. I don't know. It's odd looking to me. I don't want to throw too much shade at him, but kind of a little disturbing. So I guess with that weird takeaway, Mike, how'd you feel about the George Soteropoulos versus Billy Miles fight?
Well, George Soteropoulos, he was actually the most decorated, best jiu-jitsu practitioner in Team Sarah. My brother would talk about this guy's game as like he was God or something, dude. Like, it used to piss me off how much he would just talk about how well versed he was and just how smooth he was and yada yada yada. But really, he was, man. I mean, like he showed in this fight, he was just so smooth. Once he got you on the ground from a takedown, most likely a single leg down, he would just get you from side side control to full mount over or take your back, just super smooth. And I can't say enough good things about George Soteropoulos and his jiu-jitsu. He's also a really, really good guy.
Next up is the reason that we are going with Tough 6 finale. I mean, granted, we have 2 fights we're going to talk about after that fact, and we're going to tell you guys what the bonuses were and stuff like that, and figure out what we're going to do for next week. But this was this is Mike's brother's first fight in the UFC. So John War Machine Copenhaver defeated Jared J-Rock Rollins with a TKO in the 3rd round after a spectacular reversal to top position. You don't see that very often, and landed heavy shots till the ref called him off. The odds for that fight closed actually with War Machine or John at plus 100 to J-Rock's minus 120. And I mean, I remembered this fight being a lot more one-way traffic. I thought it was just an utter smashing from Mike's brother there. On the rewatch, it was a lot closer than I remember it. There were large sections of the fight where, not the majority, but large sections of the fight where J-Rock was doing some work, had some control on the top, and was landing some blows, and actually had a few near finishes on his own. This would have actually been a tricky fight if it went to the scorecards with how back and forth that 3rd round was.
I was shitting bricks.
Oh, yeah. So, Mike, I know you have a lot more interesting takes on this fight than I ever could, so by all means, take it away on your brother's debut in the UFC.
Oh, man. I mean, it couldn't have started off any worse. The first fucking round, dude. The first thing I told my brother, you fucking don't kick. You suck at kicking, dude. Like, you fucking suck. Like, you don't high kick. You don't kick. You're not a kicker. You don't need to kick. Every time you throw your kick, you get taken down. What you do, he throws a little kick, gets taken down right away from J-Rock. I was so fucking pissed off, dude, but then he got back up and reversed him. And it just went on. The first round, he just was controlling J-Rock mostly the whole time and had control. I felt like the round 1 was ours. And then round 2 was started off kind of the same thing. But then J-Rock turned the tide and kind of took over with some elbows from the bottom that were just lethal, man. I never seen anything like it. I didn't realize how much they were scoring or damaging my brother, especially from the nosebleed seats that the UFC gave the family members because they're jackasses. But it was pretty cool, though, because I'm up there and I'm in the nosebleeds, and J-Rock's brother-in-law is in the nosebleeds too, obviously. And we're like maybe 30, 40 feet away from each other. And once you realize that he's who he is and I'm who I am, and I'm cheering for my brother, and my brother's winning the first round, and I'm talking shit to him, and then J-Rock would start winning the second round, and he'd be talking shit to me, and I'd be like, fuck, dude, I got all that money down. I put half my rent down, which was about $750 on my brother, because he was a plus like 130 underdog. It was definitely not the smartest move. J-Rock was a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and also was more decorated in Japan as well for fighting. And so I didn't even know all that. I just knew I had faith in my brother. But as the fight just kept going on, and then my brother in the third round, he got dropped and went to his butt. I was like, holy shit, dude, this might be it, man. I don't even know if he's quitting right now, or I know he's tired. They're both tired. But luckily, he never quits. And he got a sweep off of a Kimura that Barrett Yoshida was famous for, and he swept him, and he laid down the punches and elbows from hell and knocked him out, and that's why he was so emotional too. It was his friend, but I mean the fight was just unreal. I mean it took him so long to get to the UFC, to get that win at the Palms Casino. It was just an epic day and night. And then I instantly, once my brother knocked him out, I looked over at J-Rock's brother-in-law, and I was like, that's right, bitch. And I got fucking $750 on the family, pussy. And I fucking went. I didn't even watch the Guida and Horta live. I ran to go get my money, dude.
Well, with that much riding on it, especially that much compared to what you had, that you win, you have to run the window after that.
I was 19. I was 19, 20 years old.
Dude, if I would have made that much money in one shot at 19, I would have done the same thing. I'd be like, this is awesome. This is what I was here for. Peace.
Dude, it was epic, man. It was such an adrenaline rush.
Oh, man. Now to move, it's hard to move on from that, because that's obviously for Mike and probably for the breakdowns of these fights, that's kind of like that's the highlight. But we do have two more fights. The final fight of the contestants from The Ultimate Fighter to see who was the Ultimate Fighter for Season 6. Mac Danzig beat Thomas Spear with a first round rear naked choke. He just flattened Spear out, showing his experience and technique over the bigger and more powerful Spear. Because this was one of those times where if you went The Ultimate Fighter, you could have a situation where you had 20-something or more fights going into The Ultimate Fighter, fighting against a guy who had less than half that and didn't face any of the competition and just had some raw strength and power. This was one of those fights. Danzig had said that he's going to for sure drop to 155 after this, and then he did, and had a long career after that at 155. Mike, how you feeling about the Mac Danzig versus Thomas Spear fight? I mean, in hindsight, it seemed a little ridiculous. Actually, we had mentioned it earlier, but just a quick... No, I think I gave you guys the odds on the War Machine Rollins fight. For the Mac Danzig Spear fight, it was Danzig was minus 155. Man, that was a gift in hindsight. Versus Tommy Spear at plus 135. Man, this is before I was betting, so seeing that now after watching the show, that was a gift of a line.
There was so much money made on this card, bro. Like I can't tell you how many my brother's friends and family and like everybody in the crew of, because we had so much connection between Troy Manalones and then Saunders, right? And then I mean it just went down the list all the way to basically the beginning of the card. So it just there was people who parlayed it and made bank. There was people, like I said, I had all my money on my brother, so I couldn't even spread out the funds on people. But I mean, it would have been a magical night for a parlay, and I just wish I knew how to bet like that, but I didn't.
Oh man, a lot of people, at least a lot of people I've talked to, and in my personal experience, my first time betting, and a lot of people's first time betting, is when you go to a live fight that has the options for betting, and you bet. It's as weird as it's kind of overwhelming, because when you're betting online, man, you take your time, you maybe type in a number. Man, that's not looking good. I need to think about that. Am I as confident in that one as I think? What does that parlay look like? What are the odds for that? Okay,
but the Mac Danzig negative 155 going back to it, that should have been negative 1,000.
Oh,
the
man.
Jiu-Jitsu difference and MMA experience was so far ahead that Mac Danzig was a pretty amazing athlete, and nutritional wise he was on par, and he didn't drink and he didn't do drugs either, so he was a great specimen for an athlete at that moment, but then he just disappeared kind of.
Well, and actually somewhat had a training camp. I mean, I tried to do my best to refresh, because I watched this season way back when, but I didn't really I hate to break it to you guys, I didn't want to rewatch the entire season, so I watched a lot of the middle stuff that they, the little pre-fight packages they do for each fight, and they're showing Thomas Spear talking about how to get in shape for this fight, he doesn't really have a training camp, but he's running with a tire tied to him. He's flipping a tractor tire, and he's hitting a tire with a sledgehammer. And then
It's so funny.
and it's like just like, and that was it. Like that was like there wasn't like, oh, I found this great guy to train with.
Strength is going to beat you up. Matt Hughes.
So that's why he was on Matt. He was going to be on. I can't remember if he was going to be or he wasn't Matt Hughes' team because of that, but because they found that connection. But it's like that's not a thing, man. And yeah, then like we talked about, like Mac Danzig, was in the UFC for like his last UFC fight was in 2013. So he was in the UFC for 7 years. Then he took a break, decently long break. And then 2017, he fought once for CFL and got a win. And then he actually apparently had a fight scheduled in 2018 that never actually happened. I mean, I know he retired at that point. I mean, but he fought for such a long time in the UFC. Like, it's impressive. But so then the main event of said fight card was Roger Huerta, who at the time was the UFC darling, who had the model looks and seemed to have the skill backing it up. He was getting beaten from pillar to post by Guida. Like, Guida was taking him down at will, to eating some shots, but really going for it. And then in the third round, even at the point when Clay Guida was going for a takedown, Huerta lands some hammer fists down to the side and is able to scramble to a position and rear naked chokes Clay Guida, who, like, as soon as it's locked on, not long after that, just starts tapping, and you're just utterly shocked, and it's just fed into the Roger Huerta myth that kept going, Mr. ESPN cover, who eventually faltered in a major way. Mike, how were you for this main event of the tough finale?
Yeah, this is when you started to realize that Clay Guida was a little monster, a little Tasmanian devil that just comes in there with a bunch of heat. But, thank God Horta, weathered the storm and was able to, just use his experience and size. He was much bigger on Guida and just, flatten him out, finish him. So it was a great fight. Like I said, I was so amped up on my brother's win and everything that nothing mattered in the world. The fight was so good, man, and the finish, the crowd, it peaked at that moment that my brother won that fight. I mean, you could hear the whole crowd just chanting. So I mean, it was a great moment by Horta, but like I said, my brother won that whole night.
Quickly, just because I realized I forgot to put down the odds for that. Usually I'm right on top of this, but this is one of those times I didn't know I was going to be able to find the archive of it, so I have the archive on a screen when normally I have it written down in the notes right on the same page. But the Clay Guida was a minus 115 favorite at close to Roger Huerta's minus 105. But honestly, with how the fight was playing out, Clay Guida almost deserved to be a bigger favorite in there. The bonuses for that night, being a fight night, were $30K. There were two fights of the night. Guida Huerta, Copenhagen Rollins. Mike likes to hear that. And then KO of the night was also for Copenhagen. And then submission of the night was Matt Arroyo. Although, I don't know, I'm not sure. I'm surprised. I think the Danzig submission was better, but I guess they don't always go for rear naked chokes if there's other options for whatever reason. How'd you feel about those bonuses? I remember you telling me how crazy that was for your brother that night.
Oh man, it was unreal, dude. I mean, my brother pay was $8,000 to show and $8,000 to win. So I mean, he was looking at $16,000 if he managed to beat J-Rock that night. So when they came in the back and they gave him $76,000 check, he was so stoked, man. He was on top of the world at that moment, and he realized that he made it to the big time, but he also realized that he made it to the big time and that there was going to be some consequences to pay at some point.
Now, currently, that is it for our show, but we are going to do a quick discussion here to figure out what to do in the future. What are you thinking, Mike, for the next show? Do you want to do another breakdown of a fight card, maybe with some news and notes filtered in around there? Is there a particular one that's jumping out to you, or we could leave that up to a vote in a poll, or any number of things?
Let's go back to the first Ultimate Fighter tournament.
So, do you mean UFC 1 or do you
Yeah.
mean Tough 1? UFC 1?
UFC 1, yes. I think it's just fun to see the everything, you know?
No, I gotcha. So, you heard that here. We're going back to the absolute beginning. Freely admitting I was not there for the absolute beginning, but have seen the first one after the fact. We're going back to UFC 1 for next week. And if you guys are liking these type of shows where we cover an entire fight card from the past, let us know on any possible conceivable way of contacting if you like it, if not, or suggestions you may have. Please don't forget to rate and review and subscribe to the podcast on all your platforms. We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, SoundCloud, basically you name it. We have a YouTube channel along with sound bites that are little short, easily digestible versions of this show, of the segments, of the breakdowns, basically every little thing. If you're not willing to sit down and listen to a whole show, we got you there. And by all means, comment on there to let us know if you'd like the direction of it, or if you absolutely do not agree in the least bit what I'm saying. Please show your dissension. I want to hear it. So we will be here next week for UFC 1, going back to the beginning. Mike, do you have anything to say to the people before we sign out for this week?
We just hope that all you guys and your family stay safe. Enjoy yourselves, man. I mean, get some charcoal, go get some steak, get some good good salt and pepper, and just throw it on the grill and just have some fun, man.
Obviously, stay in, stay safe, social distance, stay 6 feet away, wash your hands, all those magical things that you have heard a million times and you're tired of hearing, and even as I said them, they sound like nails on a chalkboard to you. But you know what? We're going to be back here next week for UFC 1, and with that, let's roll.